Gosh. So I'm here to introduce our last speaker of the night, Sarah Vick, who's MBA 2017. You may all know her from her amazing bike helmet. Sarah's originally from Connecticut, although she considers herself a New Englander. And her fun fact is that she loves spicy food, and if she orders something that makes her cry, it's so spicy, she'll probably want more of it.
There's a lot of people when you see them all up here. I think a lot of you guys know me. You might know me as a beer geek. You might know me as that weird physics nerd. You might know me as that crazy chick from Competitive Strategy who really loves peppermint JoJo's, which I still do love. But I wanted to get up here today and talk about the fact that you should also know me as an Episcopalian. It even sounds dirty, right? I know that at MIT we don't love to talk about God, but I'm going to, so please indulge me. So I'll start at the beginning. My dad grew up in a pretty secular household upstate New York. My mother, on the other hand, grew up in a very Irish Catholic home, about 6 miles that way, in Medford. And that meant two things. One is that my grandmother was an absolute saint, is an absolute saint. And the other was that my mother went to 18 years of Catholic school, which meant that she's an atheist. So when my parents met in the early 1980s, they didn't really know what their relationship to God was. And they still didn't know when their first son was born, my older brother, in 1983. So when my brother was born, you can imagine my Grammy calls. And Grammy asks, "Oh, what's his name? Is he beautiful, healthy? When's he going to be baptized?" And my parents had no idea, so they came up with a plan. And they dressed my brother in my mother's baptismal gown, and then they went down the street. They lived in Manhattan. They went to a local church, and they had a stranger take photographs of them. And then they printed those photographs and posted them to my grandmother and said, "Ta-da! All taken care of. Don't worry." So by the time I was born, about 4 years later, the situation had changed. My parents had moved to the woods, to a little tiny town in Connecticut, and my father had actually become quite good friends with the rector at St. Andrew's, the local parish. And so when I was born, my father wanted to have me baptized. And my mom was an atheist, is an atheist, so she goes, "Yeah, a little bit of water in her head, no worries, go for it, have fun." And they decided to do both of us, doubleheader. So I was baptized together with my brother, and I know it's really hard to believe that, but there was a problem, and that is that my brother is chattier than I am, which is difficult to believe, but it's true. And so you can imagine the conversation that they're having in the car, going to my grandmother's house the following week of like, "Please, please, please do not tell your grandmother that you were just baptized." And I think literally by an act of God, he did not talk. And my Grammy was none the wiser. So that was the end of that story. So 7 years later, I was about to go to sleepaway camp for the first time. And I was super excited because my brother had gone the year before. And there's one thing about little sisters, and that's that we love to emulate the things that our older brothers do. And I was super excited about camp. And it turned out I loved camp. Man, camp was the best. I got to play capture the flag all day. I got to swim in that lake that, like, God knows what was in that lake. Got to make rock art, which my mother loved when I brought it home. And every night at 8 p.m., we would gather in Kenyon Hall, and we would have Compline, which is effectively evening prayer. And now that I think of it, we also said grace before every meal. And we had a little Bible study at 10 o'clock in the morning every day. and the beginning and end of each week had full Eucharist, which all of the families participated in. And holy shit, I went to church camp. I went to church camp for 10 years. Camp Washington is in every way an absolute blessing. It was a wonderful, wonderful place. I learned how to make a campfire at Camp Washington. I learned how to be an adventurer. And I also learned how to be grateful. And I think there's one moment that really stands out in my mind when I think about what that meant. And it was that we were on a canoe trip in northern Maine, and it was a 10-day canoe trip, and the weather had been like it was today the entire time, which meant that we were damp and cold, and you could already see the weather coming in for today, for that day. And it was going to be another damp, cold, wet day. All of our gear stank. And we stood in a circle and held hands and thanked God for the beautiful creation that He has given us. And it was true. It was like the most beautiful place I'd ever been in my life, and I still absolutely love those waters. Yeah. So despite my indoctrination at Camp Washington, by the time I was 20, I was a very strong CEO. That's Christmas and Easter only. My mom, by that time, was very transparent about the fact that she was atheist. My father had swung the other way. He was and still is the treasurer of St. Andrews, and on the vestry has been since I can remember. Goes to church every single Sunday. He's in the choir. He's great in the choir. And I was studying physics. And to be honest, I didn't think that I could reconcile God and faith with physics. No. I believed in the strong force. I believed in quantum mechanics. I thought that Einstein was probably God, just because there probably wasn't a God. And so faith was not part of my life at all. And you know what? Physics really worked well as a pseudo-religion. There's formulas and equations and everything makes sense, and you take all the numbers and you put them into the formulas and you get out the answer and it looks great. And college was a lot like that you put in a lot of hard work, you got out good grades, and life was easy, right? Life made a lot of sense. It was easy to work with. And a couple years later, things were not so easy. A couple years into consulting, I think everybody has terrible consulting stories. Sorry, Mary Ellen. I had been on a project in Portland, Oregon, flying out of Boston, back and forth every single week, red eyes every Thursday, a boss who was a tyrant, or panicking, depending on which mood I felt he was in. And I was really lost, for lack of a better word. And it was around that time that my housemate, Matthew, started asking me again if I wanted to go to church with him. And at first I was like, no, I don't need to go to church again. That's a thing of the past. And so maybe it was probably 6 weeks of asking. And I finally said, okay, I'll come. So I go to him to Trinity for the evening service, and I'm sitting in this beautiful church, and the service is lovely. And then we come to the closing prayer, and it's this prayer that we said every single day at camp. And it goes, "Keep watch, dear Lord, with those who work or watch or weep this night, and give your angels charge over those who sleep. Tend the sick, Lord Christ. Give rest to the weary. Bless the dying. Soothe the suffering. Pity the afflicted. Shield the joyous. And all for your love's sake. Amen." And all of the gratitude that I had from Camp Washington came flooding back to me. And I realized that all of those things that I had been thankful for there, I had here. And, you know, there's a feeling that I actually associate with God. And it's a little bit like the feeling of falling in love. And it's a little bit like the feeling of trying to hold back tears. And it like starts from here and emanates up to the top of your head until you feel like you're going to get lifted out of your seat. And since then, faith has come back into my life. And it's not that my job got better. It didn't. And it's not that I was ever able to reconcile quantum physics with Genesis. I will never be able to do that. But what it is that I now take an hour out of my week and meditate on all of the things I have to be thankful for, all of the blessings that have come my way in the past, all the blessings that will come my way in the future. And that was why I wanted to tell this story tonight, because we all have so much to be thankful for. And I would encourage you to find that one little thing in your life that will help you to help you remember gratitude. And it might be a friend, it might be your husband, it might be a necklace. For me, it's a prayer. But find it and keep it. Thanks be to God.